Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an exciting networking session and made a few connections. Make sure that you continue those conversations. You connect on LinkedIn, you connect outside of the summit. This is all about the connections between you, not just about listening in, but to take action, form new partnerships. So make sure that you're doing that. I'm excited to host this session because throughout the years with Impact Hustlers, we've had so many early stage founders or even just people with an idea come to us and say, I want to do something, I want to be part of the solution, I want to start a startup, but I don't know where to start. It feels very daunting. I don't have a lot of money behind me, saved up, investors, rich family, and I want to get started and create solutions. Maybe I have a bunch of industry experience. And I'm really excited to share a few lessons learned from working with hundreds of founders throughout the last few years at Impact Hustlers. So if you just have an idea or don't even have an idea yet, but want to start something in climate, this is the session for you. If you're already running a startup, you're up and running, and you just need some extra support, I would highly recommend to check out the Impact Hustlers community. That's impacthustlers.com/community. And you can actually enter the discount code CTFS22 to get a free month and check it out and get the regular support that we offer there. But let's dive into this, how to actually launch your climate startup. And for everybody that's in this session now, I would like you to put a few words in the chat so I can get to know you. So if you introduce yourself, your name is already shown anyway, so forget about the name. But if you share your location, the problem that you want to solve or that you already started working on, and what support do you need? What do you feel is the most challenging for you right now? What do you feel is like the scariest bit of being a founder in the space? And I will watch the comments here. So put that in the chat for me. Again, your location, the problem that you want to solve, and the support that you need. And I appreciate people will take a little time to post that. Do that as soon as you can. And then if you see others posting about problems that you're excited about as well, or you see founders mentioning stuff that you can help them with, please just click on their name and connect to them through Hopin. You can actually connect to them and offer your support. Maybe there's ways to collaborate. All this is about collaboration. So make sure that you connect to people as well. So I will keep an eye on the chat and press on. Feel free to put your details in the chat. All right, cool. So let's get started. Very brief background. You've heard me speak a few times and introduce panels and moderate. But I want to give you a bit of a background of Impact Hustlers and myself. So I'm actually a second-time founder. I started another company a few years ago, which helped people find job opportunities in the climate space. So that's why platforms like Terra.do and Climate Base are close to my heart, because I see them make the stuff happen that I wanted to make happen a few years ago. And I did make it happen, but ultimately after about 2 years, we failed, me and my co-founder, for all kinds of painful reasons that I'm happy to share another time. Then I joined the founding team of a startup that was backed by Founders Forum. Some of you may be familiar with Founders Forum. It's a big entrepreneurship community founded by the co-founder of lastminute.com. And we built an alternative MBA program for entrepreneurial people, and I was the first hire there and built that a company that's still up and running together with the co-founders. And then I'm also a small scale, I have to emphasize, small scale investor in dozens or so, and a VC scout for a few venture funds. But more importantly, throughout the last few years, I've worked with a range of founders myself, either as an advisor, as a consultant, or teaching student entrepreneurs at University College London, running a startup accelerator program a few years ago at Wyra as well, which is a corporate startup accelerator. And I've tried to extract a bunch of lessons from that experience, from watching a lot of founders up close and even being a founder myself a few times. And I'm trying to share those with you today. So You're here because you want to launch a climate startup. That's the assumption, right? But where do you actually start? Now, my suggestion is to actually start here. And this may be a familiar framework that many of you have seen or heard of before, but it's really useful for you as well as you think through what type of startup should you be building. And this is the model of Ikigai. So this is a Japanese concept, and all it means is the reason for being, or basically purpose is a good word. And you see a really nice diagram here of where both you personally in terms of your career, but also especially if you're building a startup, where you want to aim for. You really want to aim for the middle of this visual. The middle is Ikigai. And that's where you combine what the world needs. So what does the world really desperately need? What do you love doing and really, you would do it 24/7 if you could. You just enjoy doing it with all your heart. What are you good at? That could be your previous experience, but also just skills that you're naturally good at or that you've picked up over the years. And then what you can be paid for as well. In the context of startups, this is a really important point, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. Can you create a business model around what you're doing? It doesn't mean necessarily that all ventures in this space have to be for profit. Actually, I've seen a range of ventures that are non-profits, but usually they still need, or always they still need, a sustainable revenue model, or at least a sustainable funding model that doesn't depend on ad hoc donations, but really gets them some continuous funding and gets them the fuel they need to deliver their mission. So always think about that. I think very often people fall in love with an idea, but they may not actually have the skills yet, or have looked at kind of the needs, that what the world actually needs and what they can be paid for. So always think about that when you start out. Now, another point that I want to bring across, and that I see a lot of founders make a mistake with, and I certainly did with my first startup, which is kind of confusing global problems with customer needs or customer problems. And what I mean with that is, this graph is obviously totally simplified, but it's basically showing a traditional business, right? You're trying to make money by solving a customer need. That's kind of the basics of capitalism. You solve somebody's problem. I want to eat a hamburger. Here I am as McDonald's. I'm selling it to you and I'm making revenue as a result. It's the simplest form of business. This is not the complete picture for what we are about. We're about, in climate tech and in impact, we're about adding another layer to this. And that's the global problems that we want to solve. And I always say this is kind of the increased difficulty level of being an impact-driven founder. This is really the hard mode of entrepreneurship, I think. And it's not to scare you away, but to really acknowledge like how much work it really takes to find the perfect overlap of these three things. What kind of massive global problem can you solve? Even within climate change, there's so many different sub-problems that need to be solved, whether it's plastic pollution or food waste or energy, whatever it may be. But then how can you match that up with a real customer need that people have right now, and that they are really well aware that they have that need? And I'll give you some advice in a second on how you can actually figure out whether people have the need or not. And then last but not least, actually making the revenue with it. Do people actually pay for this? Are they already paying for alternative solutions or products out there that you can capture and basically provide them with a better solution? Now, this is a graph some of you may have seen, but there's some good data from founders that CB Insights collected around the reasons why startups fail. And the biggest reason says ran out of cash. I think that's a little bit of an excuse sometimes, because usually there is an underlying reason why startups run out of cash. Maybe they weren't able to build a sustainable business model, but very often it's actually related to the second point you see on screen, which is no market need. people actually don't feel like they need this, the market doesn't actually need this, or doesn't quite understand the value you can bring. So you actually struggle to sell and struggle to access your customers. So I'm going to talk about that market need or customer need now, and what you can do in the early days to make sure there is a real need. It's very easy. We're all idealists, or at least very mission driven, meaning we all want to be part of the solution to climate change. But it's important to match that up with real needs on the ground. And I'll share some advice on that. So don't forget about solving a pressing customer need. Your customers need to perceive the problem you're solving as important, and not just a global problem, not just climate change, but what is it practically that you deliver in terms of value to them. Now, what you want to do, and this is kind of paraphrasing a quote I heard, I think Tim Schumacher, who was speaking yesterday, say on another session a long time ago. But he was basically saying, you want to basically build solutions even climate change deniers will buy, right? You don't, you may, in the early days, you may want to sell to people that, are, fully mission aligned. And Tomer was just speaking about that. Everybody wants you to win. But if you depend on only the most passionate people to buy your product, and if you don't think about the majority of people that may just focus on, does it solve a problem for me? Does it improve my life? Does it improve our company's revenue? Does it save us money? If you don't focus on that early enough, or at least think about it, you will have a challenge really scaling up your solution. So while in the early days, you may well focus on the most passionate people that are at the forefront of climate action, you will have to think about, how can this be scaled to people that wouldn't otherwise take action? How can you build a startup that's just the best possible solution for the customer problem? And as an effect of delivering that solution, basically, you want to make sure that you solve the global problem as well. All right, let's go on. So how do I actually validate your customer need? And again, this is pretty common knowledge, I feel. On a high level, everybody agrees. Most people that want to be founders or that are founders have heard about the Lean Startup or read the book. That's all great. In practice, it still looks quite different. And that's why I'm here to reiterate what you need to do to actually get things off the ground. Now, these are 3 things to start with, and this is not exhaustive. Obviously, this is just a short session that we're having now. But what I recommend, rather than jumping into your solution or your idea straight away, you may have an amazing idea and insight that you think, okay, this can really change the world. I think this is going to make the difference. And you get obsessed about it. And I'm definitely like that, where I start building stuff. Like, I'm not a coder or developer, but I can put together solutions pretty quickly with no-code tools. So it's a bit of a risk, because I spend a lot of time just jumping straight into it. Let's do it. Let's create it. But it's a bit of a risk. Take a step back first and think about, what customer segment or what sector in society do I actually want to serve? And this could be just out of pure passion and love, but it could be based on your career so far, on your experience. Who do you want to actually support with what you do? And start there. Don't think about your solution. Maybe don't even think about specifically the problems these people have yet, because that's what you're about to find out in the next step. Now, I don't actually tend to recommend that many books to founders. I think a lot of times it's about doing and getting stuff done, rather than reading all the entrepreneurship books. But if you don't read any other entrepreneurship book, I should say that you should read at least one that's called The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. And it's a pretty thin book, which helps you understand how to have deep customer conversations that unlock insights from people beyond, the superficial level. So if I asked you today, would you buy this solution from me? You may say yes. Yeah, I would. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you're actually going to do that. So the MUM test is a methodology to ask people more about their past behavior. What have they done in the past? Are they already spending money on solving the problem? Are they already spending time on solving the problem? What's the most frustrating part about existing solutions for them? You're trying to focus on that instead of asking them about your hypothetical solution and how they may be able to use it. So this is kind of the number one advice. Go to YouTube, check out the MUM test, buy the book, whatever you need to do. There is a bunch of free resources as well online that you can read about. The most important bit is really the third bit. You want to think about which problems do your customer already spend money and time on solving. That's the best indicator that you've actually found a customer problem that you can solve, right? So you may want to create a sustainable plane, right? Electric plane or whatever it may be. But what problem do your customers already have that they spend the money on? If I create an electric plane, I'm obviously looking at a huge market that already exists, but in other spaces is not as obvious. So focus on that. Now, after you've done those customer conversations, this is actually what the life of a founder very often looks like. And I don't know if Tomer is still around, but also any founder that's already up and running, I think for pretty much all of us, it feels a little bit like that in the early days, right? We don't necessarily have the resources to build a fully fledged product, an amazing software or hardware, even more difficult. Very often we have to improvise. And this is where the whole notion of an MVP comes from. Minimum viable product. This is a concept from the Lean Startup. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but I want to make one important point for everyone. And that's MVP stands for minimum viable product. But I think actually we shouldn't be that obsessed with products. We should be obsessed with basically having those first conversations with people rather than building something, really figuring out what do I need to do with my customers to really learn about their problems and create the minimalist solution that I need to create to deliver the solution that solve the problem for my customers. Yeah, what's the least thing you can do to solve the problem for your customers? If it's software that you want to create, you likely don't even have to create the software, but you can find very manual ways of doing this. All right, so just wrapping up here, I know this is a very short slot, so I'm just going to cover some key lessons here. But I also want to introduce you to something that can actually help you going forward. And this is something that we're launching early next year at Impact Hustlers called the Climate Launchpad. That's our current working title. So this is for everyone that only has an idea and is just getting started. And what this is a 6-week program, a really intense program where you actually get to take your idea to launch MVP with us. Even if you don't quite have an idea yet or you're exploring many ideas, that's not a problem. And then from there, we give you access to our network. You've seen many of our amazing network already join this session, and also our pitch for climate events. You get a year of community membership included, and we have an early bird offer for anybody that wants to sign up for that. If you'd like to check that out, I'm just going to show you the process now. I put a link in the chat and at the end. But basically, this is roughly the process. We take you from problem discovery to actually validating the solution to launching. And then the biggest gap that I see very often with programs like this is that you don't have enough onward support. You can't launch and build a company within just a couple of weeks. Joining for 6 weeks is great, but you will need long-term support. So that's why we have the Impact Hustlers community, and that's all included. So you get a year of onward support after the program, so you can actually make things happen. Okay, enough about this. You can find out more on our website, and you can register for the early bird offer. This is really based on proven frameworks, Lean Startup, as well as the double diamond principle there on the right. We've done similar sessions with organizations like On Deck and UCL. I've been teaching these frameworks at UCL here in London. So I'd love to have you there. And I'll skip forward to my last slide, impacthustlers.com/launch. If you want to get into this and you want to be considered for this, let me know. Also, there is financial support available for anybody that can't quite afford that price tag. Thanks very much, everyone. I was really excited to have you all join here, and I will definitely read through the chat very soon to get in touch with you and see how I can help.